Hi, all. Welcome to another episode of Saturday Architecture. We have Deepak with us here. He works in Microsoft. He works with a lot of enterprise customers on consulting. One thing that has been bothering me for the past a month or so is that it's been 18 months since Gen AI has come. But when we talk about serious business problems and solutions, even within the tech savvy crowd, I don't see Gen AI as first possibility to solve something. I would have thought of it something like let's use Teams or let's use email to solve it. And when I double click further, I find quite a bit of the tech population itself getting they can get through a day without using even the basic version of Gen AI tools, whether it is Microsoft Copilot or ChatGPT or Gemini Broad. I don't see them, and in fact, like even in a week, they don't seem to use it. And I'm saying, like, how come such a great tool is not used? So, what gives, even from an end user perspective, forget a business solution? So, I wanted to pick your brains, Deepak. What's your point of view? What do you
So,
see?
so I think you're right in the fact that it is not mainstream in the usage. So I have just 2 points where one is it really mainstream in terms of capability? So the answer is yes. It is mainstream in terms of capability, in terms of if somebody really wants to use it, all the tools exist. It is really as good as infrastructure today.
When you mean as an infrastructure, the how part of it, right?
Yes.
How to use Gen AI or how to use it with security, how to use it with privacy, how to deploy a model, how to get it. Those
Yes.
things are fairly mature and pretty much mainstream that you can actually go and do it. There are no confusions or iffy, it's not if and buts around that. But with so many models coming, you think it's still stable?
I
And
think
so,
I think it is stable enough for people to start using it. So
okay.
as if I go by that whole technology adoption curve, you remember that whole technology adoption curve, I would say we are past the hype. So
Hmm.
the initial hype is gone. Now I would say we are in the early adopters phase. So we are in the early adopters phase where lots of people are actually trying it, but you cannot really call it mainstream because they're trying it. Even the enterprises who are trying this, dipping your toe in the pond.
But I think from
Sometimes they're
technology, from a pure technology perspective, clarity on what to use, what library to use, it is clearly over the hype cycle. It is not a
yes.
hype anymore. You can actually put something in production and feel confident that it will run. Now that leads us to the next thing that we can say from a tech perspective, it is kind of mainstream. But from a business perspective, it is not yet there.
Not
Copilot or ChatGPT is available free of cost to a common man on the street. That is
yes.
evidence that the infrastructure exists. The
Yeah.
infrastructure is available to the common man.
So one of the things which I would just want to emphasize is that lots of enterprise customers who have, let's say, Microsoft Teams, they are definitely using AI on day-to-day basis because earlier you would this is a trend I'm seeing. Earlier, most Teams meetings to be recorded or transcribed, right?
Mhm.
Now that has become a standard. Once you get the transcription, it can, because it is Gen AI, it can go through the text and it actually can get highlight the important points, summarize the meeting. All those kinds of things have become mainstream in the sense that I think that is the first use case where I would say that it has gone mainstream, where people don't object to now recording or transcription because they see the value in getting the use of it. Now, this you may say that this is not a developer level of mainstream, but it is still mainstream in the sense that average person now believes that, oh yeah, why not let AI make the meeting notes, right? So at least that is there. Now, coming to the specific use cases where you could get more value out of it. Now, in the mainstream, I would say this is large amount of value which you gain because nobody is now required to remember take the minutes of meeting, etc. So that's a big efficiency gain in that sense from Gen AI. But from, let's say, now if people are trying to solve problems using Gen AI, I would say this is more like a packaged solution becoming available to general public and they finding use for it. So this is a mainstream solution from the packaged perspective, because Teams is a packaged solution.
Okay,
Yeah.
let me take a business scenario itself, right? Like, let's say we are talking about application optimization or consolidation of applications and moving them into the cloud or separate or as a microservice kind of stuff. Now, there is a lot of work that goes around collecting information about the application, consolidating them, processing, and doing this, right? I still find people sitting with Excel sheets, filling up these things and making all that and do, and then say which one can be put together. And to me, this is a very, which can save very senior folks very lot of people time. You throw random usage data to it, random customer issues at it, and then say tell which application is having more issues, which having the, your GenAI will do the basic work in just like that. What
Yeah.
stops people from thinking let me do this manually? Why won't I use GenAI? Why? What stops them?
We have to cross the chasm. So this reminds me of that book, Crossing the Chasm. So
Mhm.
we so this is where we have to get away from the early adopters to the mainstream adoption of Gen AI. So we are still in the early adopter stage of the technology. So we have to cross that chasm where it becomes no brainer to use it, right? Where so if you I think you will be able to bring that up, that chart which shows the adoption curve. So within that adoption curve, there is this chasm between early adopters and the mainstream adoption. So the mainstream adoption, we are in that chasm, right? So we have to jump, we have to make that leap, which will convert everything which we see as a blocker today, or in the mindset, right? So
What are
it's
those
more.
blockers? Yeah, what is the blockers?
One is the prevalence of the knowledge of application. It's like, so
Where can I
it's
use it or how can I
yes,
use it?
how I can use it. So now if you go on YouTube today, you will find hundreds of videos of how you can use chat GPT for this, chat GPT for that, copilot for this, copilot for that. So that is happening now. That is still, I would say, early adopter phase. People who are looking at those videos are especially seeking that information.
Okay.
It's not come to the stage where it becomes the de facto solution. Right? It has to become a de facto solution where people just don't
So from
think
a
about it.
mindset perspective, it's not an infrastructure yet. It is a good to
Yes,
have, or maybe someday it might happen kind of a thing. It's not like, hey, I
exactly.
can use it to solve my problem. It is not in that state yet.
Right. For example, I'll just tell you one example from my application, which I was trying to see. See, we created a whole lot of process documentation around certain subjects, right? So of what needs to be done. There's a detailed wiki of how certain processes have to run, and different controls, etc. Now, it's it's not very easy to navigate if you don't know what you're looking for, right? Now, this is an ideal case for specific AI, Gen AI kind of assistant to help with that documentation. It says, I want to find this information. Can you find it in this document? This goes beyond search. This is my use case. Can you tell me how this applies to this? And it came to my mind, but I'm still not able to push it to that level where it becomes really, I want this thing, this should be default way of thinking. So it is not yet come to that.
So in this case, is it like that last bit, right? Like the last mile connectivity kind of a thing. As a concept, it is there, but that last bit, how do I? Okay, GenAI can do something about it, but how will it actually land on my desktop with my files with my system? That last mile connectivity clarity is not there. Could be one of the reasons.
Just think about it. See, when we were talking about robotic process automation years ago,
Yeah.
it was a hard sell for a lot of people. You have to go and convince people and say this is why it works, and people don't trust it. So there is also a level of trust in the technology, because if you open any of the clients, any of the chat GPT or what is Gemini and Copilot, first thing you will see is, will say it can give wrong information. There's a caveat there, right? It can give wrong information, right? So the providers themselves are being careful in promote as a trusted solution. So there is a natural level of skepticism which comes in, because you see the provider doesn't have
I
trust
think
in the.
it makes it I think it makes it even more harder than a typical technology solution, because at least
Yes,
technology solutions don't say don't use this. In this
yes,
case, it's like whether, even if it is a Excel or a Power Automate and evil, nobody gives you a warning like your tobacco warning, right?
yes,
Injurious, probably injurious to health, kind of a
yes,
thing, right?
exactly.
I think the metaphor is that, like, it's like having a
Be careful,
cigarette
really.
packet with a warning, like, you might get cancer, kind of a thing. And like the moment you say, Jenny, be careful, you might die because of using this. So I think
Yes,
that subconsciously pays to the people and added to the general resistance to any new thing. And
yes,
along with this, so to kind of, if I kind of summarize whatever you said together, right? Like from an infrastructure perspective, yeah, it seems to be mature. But from a business perspective, to begin with, I think the first one probably is that connecting the use cases naturally, right? Oh, these are all the areas where it is applicable. That is not very clear for business scenarios. What we see is things like creating an image or summarization, and then business people say, I'm not in the business of content generation, so I've got nothing to do with
yeah,
Gen AI. And the second thing which you're talking about, how do I go through this mountain of documentation to get something out? Probably they don't connect to it because that's not talked enough. And then if ever somebody gets through that, then you have this thing like use at your own risk. Okay, so the moment they get into this space, it's like use at your own risk. Why I don't want to risk my safety.
yeah. Maybe you see the bad examples are so many, right? So how AI hallucinates, right? Remember that example which I gave you on create an image without an
Yeah,
elephant in
yeah,
the room. No matter what we did,
correct,
it always created an elephant. So
correct.
so those are the kinds of things people find it funny, but they're also working as a cautionary tale that this might happen, and that is what is also a hindrance, I would say.
Yeah, and it's like a feedback, typical feedback loop. I think maybe we should take a next time to talk about what mindset people can use to practice to kind of look at this from a different perspective. Anyway, thanks, Deepak, for joining. I think it's insightful. Let's connect back.